My biggest fear is wishing that I would have done something. At the end of my life, if I have to look back, I mean, I think just the fact that we have this life, we got to look back and live with our regrets is looking back and saying, "Man, I wish I would have done that."
Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Real Estate Disruptors. Today we got Michael McDonald with Rocket Homebuyers. And Michael flew in from Las Vegas to talk about how he's wholesaled 100 plus homes for $2 million virtually, right? So I am on a mission to create 100 millionaires. The information on this podcast alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. If you take consistent action, you'll become one. Now, I've been talking about that for years now, and we still see some people struggling to take action. So we created a form to help you get some clarity about where you're at. So you want to get some clarity on where you're at financially, go to wealthevaluation.com. We do have our live in-person training coming up March 31st. We're spending 2 full days giving you every tactic, strategy, and tool to close more deals. The market has changed, and if your sales skills have not, you are leaving money on the table. We have clients telling us that they're closing deals now that they thought were not even closable. So to attend our live event, go to salesdisruptors.com. And this is a live show, so ask your questions. Michael, the answer. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So first question for you is, what was your life like right before real estate?
All right. I love this one. So right before real estate, I was working a 9 to 5 job, actually at a hospital doing dietetics, and just kind of confused, talking to the dietitians, realizing that I wasn't making that much money, and I wanted to start a family, and so that's what I was doing right before I found out about real estate, and then went to a seminar and like jumped in, and the rest is history.
Working as a dietitian,
Yeah.
you said that was not enough. I mean, what kind of money were you making?
I mean, gosh, I was making probably 35,000, and I was not a dietitian, so I was a dietetic technician. And the dietitians who were working with, like I was subordinates with, they were making 45, 50,000 a year, and they had master's degrees. I had an associate's degree. I was not wanting to continue on that path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, like, are you married?
Yep. So I was married, and we
Kids?
just bought a house. The kids are going to come here down the road here.
Okay.
Very important part of the
So
story.
you just bought a home with your wife, and this 35,000 is just not going to cut it.
No.
Okay. So you went to a seminar, you said?
Correct. One of my buddies hit me up and said, "Hey, check out this seminar. It's make money with little to no money down." And I'm like, "Cool." Well,
That title sounds really familiar, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah. And I'm like, "Hey, let's go check it out. What do we have to lose?" So we did. We went and checked it out, and I found out that you could make $20,000-$30,000 wholesaling, and they're like, "But you have to go to the next event, and it's going to cost you $2,000." I'm like, "I don't have $2,000. Like I'm paycheck to paycheck." And just bought this house and bought the house with 3 cents in our name, like didn't have any money. And so we put the money on the credit card. My friend talked me into it, and we went to the 3-day event. And we're at that 3-day event, and they pitched another one. They're like, "This one's 20,000." And I'm like, "Dude, like don't even, like we're not going to go there." And he's like, "They're telling us we need more help." And long story short, we ran our credit. We got approved for $50,000 of seed capital and swiped the card, and
Got it.
we went in.
So at this time, you're in Nebraska or you're in Nevada?
So I was in Nebraska at this time,
Okay.
still living in my house that I owned that we just bought.
So you're going to this conference. You swiped $3,000, you said?
2,000.
2,000.
Yeah.
So you went to some smaller event, some sort of like $69, $99 event.
Yep.
They upsold you to a $2,000 event. Give you a little more information.
Right.
Left some information off the table.
Right.
Upsold you to a $20,000 event
20,000. Yeah.
for you and your buddy, or each?
Me and my buddy, he said he would split it. He didn't have the money though, so it was a payment plan back. So I pretty much fronted
So
everything.
$20K for the two of you.
Yeah.
Was that finally the right decision? Because it seemed like the first two were kind of like suspect.
Yeah. The first decision was like, what do we have to lose? And it was like, we don't even have close to enough information to feel like we know what we're going to do
Yeah.
with this. the next decision was just added value, and we took it and started to run with it. But that wasn't enough either, Steve. $22,000 in credit. Didn't know how I was going to pay it back. The best part about this story
Wait,
is
so the 20,000 event still wasn't enough.
no, nope. It keeps going. It keeps going. But here's the best part. We get home from this event. I had to call my wife and ask her, hey, like, how do you feel about this decision? And she says, well, I trust you. That's a lot of money, especially when we don't have any money. And go ahead and do what you feels right. I'm like, okay. So I made the decision. I swiped the card, get home from the event, and she says, hey, I got to show you something. I'm like, well, what's going on? This is weird. Like, you've never done this before. You're taking me to a room. What's going on here? Find out she's expecting. She shows me the pregnancy test. So not only do I just have credit card debt, a new house, I have a baby on the way, and I don't know how to do real estate investing at all to this point, right? And so this all happened so fast, and we were off to the races. I just started failing forward. I'm working a full-time job, trying to wholesale part-time.
When was this exactly?
So I was doing education for heart patients about how to eat like a sodium-free diet or whatever the thing was, right?
Yeah.
And it was just like, yeah, it was not
But like,
ideal.
how long ago was this?
That was 5+ years ago.
So 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So you go to this event, to this event, to this event, and you said that the 20,000 still wasn't enough, and they tried to upsell you to something bigger.
That's right. Yeah.
Or they're trying to upsell you to there from there.
Yeah. Oh, I know, right? It's like, how much more could we go into this? So what happened is, I had my mentor. I was going through what they were telling me to do. I was making offers on the MLS. I had no sales process, no nothing. I was just trying to regurgitate all this information that they just threw in a drive, and like I was just like overwhelmed. I mean, I barely found the time to do anything, right? And I got a call one day from the coaching company, and they're like, "Hey, how are things going?" I'm like, my wife's asking me what's going on. Like, this isn't working. We haven't gotten a deal yet, and we're 4.5, 5 months in. And they're like, "Oh, well, you need like a phone call, like one-on-one mentorship. So you need to do this." And at this point, I had probably $35,000 of credit on the card still, and like I was hoping to use that for marketing because I didn't know any better.
Right.
And he's like, "Well, we have this special $25,000, and you can get this guy's cell phone, call him whenever you need to, so on and so forth." Steve, I made the most emotional decision. I said, "Forget about it. I have nothing to lose. Put another 25,000 on credit. Another 25,000 on credit." So this is all on me. 47,000 on credit. And I was barely making the bills the way it was. And so I was like just buried at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So did that eventually turn into a deal?
Eventually it did. So here's what's funny. As if that wasn't enough, I was like, go to the local meetups, like find people to rub shoulders with, right? So I did, and I met a guy who had done some coaching for Robert Kiyosaki through his Rich Dad seminar education, and it was a hands-on, in-person training. And so when I started rubbing shoulders with him, I actually started to see how these negotiations are done. I started to see how were we finding deals. All of this other information for the $45,000, it was probably telling me that, but I wasn't hearing it because my learning approach was different and well received over here.
Yeah.
So I called a Zillow lead on a Sunday. This is 6 months in to this journey. And it was a tired landlord, went straight to the appointment, got the property under contract, put it out on an investor group, sold it for $30,000 above what we contracted it for. And that day, I looked at my wife and I'm like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is why I went through this 6 months of pain to get to this point, because this is going to change our life forever.
Yeah. That's huge. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Do you think if you didn't spend 47.5, this would happen anyway? Or do you think that was a necessary investment, at least to get you framed right to start doing deals?
Yeah. I think about that a lot, man. I think it was part of the journey. I really think that was needed, because had I not had the skin in the game, I may have just been comfortable, continue to go like I was. And I had to get so uncomfortable to put that much money on. And it was painful, man.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you got this deal, Zillow's for sale by owner.
Yep. For sale by owner.
You call them, hire a landlord, you contract it, and then you sold it for $30K.
Yeah.
Were there challenges with this deal?
You know how the first deal goes.
Right. So what were some of those challenges?
Yeah. So the first thing that happened was, I'll never forget this, man. We accepted the offer. Well, let's start with this. We had an inspection. I told the seller our partners are going to be coming through, right?
Sure.
The typical, hey, my partners are going to be coming through.
Yeah.
15 people showed up.
15 partners.
15 partners, right? 15 people. The very desirable building. It was a brick fourplex, contracted for $180,000. So just a little bit of context. Seller's like, man, you have a lot of partners. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't realize this many people would show up. Like, I didn't know this many investors would be that interested, right? Didn't frame it correctly because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
Didn't know what I didn't know. The guy's offer we accepted wasn't just a clean cash offer. It was through an agent. So we not only had to pay an agent fee with all these disclosures, we had to go through a line of credit. The bank wanted an appraisal, told them it was a cash deal. We had the bank come back with the appraisal. Me, the investor, or the appraiser and the seller standing right there. The appraisal just got finished. He's looking at his paperwork. He says, man, I'm confused here. The purchase price says 180, but the appraisal needs to be at 211. Like, I'm confused here, man. What's going on? And my heart just dropped. I'm like, I don't know. Like, my partner's coming in and buy this property with me. He's like, man, the seller goes, man, he kind of smiled. Like he knew what was going on. He was like, I left a lot of money on the table, didn't I? And I'm just like, yeah. I mean, I needed this deal to go through. Like, I needed this deal to go through. And so that happened. We had a COC inspection. All of these things come up on the list. The seller's like, I'm not doing it. And I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't have the money to even pay anybody to do this. Well, I guess I'm doing these repairs. I'm changing out door locks. I'm doing these repairs that I have no business doing. And it was like 45 days in, we finally closed. And tell you what, man, the biggest relief when I picked up that check that day at that closing.
I bet.
It was painful.
But I love that you were out there doing the work. So, like, you know, I don't talk about this a lot, but, you know, part of my journey was, I mean, I remember selling condos for $30,000 where I had to go, like, change, like, the mailbox lock, right? Just to get the deal closed. And it's like 3% on $30,000 a lot of money.
No.
Right. So, it's, you know, but you do it in the hot sun and you're dealing with the post office and this and that. Like, there are a lot of things that you kind of forget were involved in getting started. So it's cool. Like, you did the dirty work to get your way here. So 15 partners. That's awesome. Dealing with appraisal, dealing with a certificacy. Was it certification of occupancy? Was it?
Yep.
Right. So you go through that and then it closes. Was it smooth after that?
I mean, questionably. After the certificate of occupancy was satisfied, it was pretty smooth sailing from there.
Got it.
But I was holding my breath all the way to the day of closing.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So how did it feel then when you did pick up that check?
It was just like the most relieving thing. And it was like this weird feeling of like, okay, this is real. Like, it was weird before that because I'm like, I don't know if this is even real. Like, I hear people talking about it all the time, but it didn't seem real. And then to realize that I made that much money in one transaction when I had made $30,000 on my job that year.
Oh yeah.
It was such a mind, like, just the top popped off. It was crazy. Yeah.
How did your wife feel about all this?
She was extremely happy, as you can imagine, because she was starting to doubt me. She was starting to, she never doubted me, but she was starting to question, like, hey, what's going on here? Is this really going to work for you? We've got this credit card. I know you're stressed out because I can see your eyes are bloodshot. Like, you're not sleeping. What's going on here? And then when she saw that, she was like, okay, there's something here.
So there's 6 months of like hustle and everything else, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what were you doing to get deals up? Like, you got this other mentorship or whatever you want to call it. What was involved in that? What were you doing in that one before meeting the people in your REIA?
Yeah, so I was just going on the MLS. I seeked out an agent, and I was making offers on all of these properties on the MLS.
You paid $47,000 to learn how to reach out to a realtor?
Basically, yeah. Essentially, yeah. And, like, there were other things, right? But like I said, I mean, I was so overwhelmed. I'm like, I just got to stick to one thing
Mm-hmm.
to see if this is going to work. And clearly, at that time, this was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't working because, like, I thought maybe I'd just make a lowball offer and somebody would just accept it. I wasn't following up. I wasn't doing things like how obviously we know we should
Right.
at that time. And then the mentors deal was I didn't get to keep that full 30,000. It was let's do 6 deals together, and I honored those 6 deals, and we would split the profits.
How much?
6 deals for
50/50?
50%. Yeah,
So you pay $25K.
I paid him 2,500.
Oh, 2,500.
Yep. So I paid the 47.5 to the company.
Mhm.
I paid this guy over here 2,500
Oh,
bucks.
the new mentor.
The new mentor.
Got it.
The
No, that
one,
makes
the
total
one,
sense.
the one that I actually took.
No,
in
I thought you
for
were saying
me.
the one you pay $25K, you got to pay him too. Like,
Oh.
sheesh.
No.
Okay. So, what would have happened if that first deal never closed?
We wouldn't probably be sitting right here today. I would have continued to go and I would have figured it out. But
Mhm.
that $20,000 net profit or whatever it was needed. It was necessary because what was happening is we had 16 months of 0% interest on these credit cards. The day I quit my job, which was about a year and a half into that journey, was the day that last dollar of credit card debt was paid off. So it was like I gotta do this to pay this off before I take any profits. So I was just barely paying myself enough
Mm-hmm.
to get to that point.
Gotcha. How did you continue, right? So you closed your first deal off of Zillow. How did you continue your momentum?
Yeah. So from there, I figured out what driving for dollars was. Started driving the streets. Started getting aggressive. Started going and knocking on some doors. And I was driving by. I started sending postcards out. So I was cold calling and then sending those people who I drove for dollars on postcards. And so I started getting deals from that. I got 6 deals that first year from basically July through the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's about the time my wife started realizing, hey, we have something here.
Right.
This is starting to get more consistent. And by the way, you're only spending 7 hours a week on this.
Yeah. So what were the other obstacles that came up early on in your journey?
Other obstacles, man. Where do we start? I mean, capital is a big one. We took on probably more than we could chew
Mhm.
right out of the gate.
In what way?
So after the first year, I had sold a lot of the same deals to my now business partner. I actually cold called him off of for rent sign, seeing if he wanted to sell that property.
Mhm.
And he said, hey, you're out there. I can see you're active. I want to quit my job. You want to quit your job. Why don't we talk about going into business together?
Mm-hmm.
So felt it out. At that point, I was on top of the world because I figured out how to wholesale real estate, right?
Right.
I made some money, and we had decided to join forces. So 2019, we decided let's partner, let's start our company, Rocket Home Buyers, and let's quit our jobs and let's go full time.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And the biggest challenge in the beginning was just like capital because we were taking $1,000 out of our own personal bank accounts before we were making any money for the first 5 months as a business and just contributing it into marketing,
Mhm.
1,000 each, just consistently. And then 4 months in, we got our first deal. And so it was just, that was the most difficult piece. And then as we continue to get momentum and deals, we're like, we got to find all money. Like we
Mhm.
have 6 contracts. How are we going to buy these houses,
Mhm.
right? So capital was a big thing.
So what did you do to solve that problem?
So we seeked out some relationships, and the first year we used a lot of hard money. So we probably bought 15 houses the first year in our partnership with hard money.
So then it sounds like you guys were really more closing on deals than wholesaling them.
We were closing on more of them because my partner, just as a background, he had flipped houses.
Mm-hmm.
He's a bit older than me, and he had real estate appraisal experience, and he had experience flipping, and so he was like, well, you're not wholesaling this property. We can make 25,000, 30,000, and this investor only wants to pay us 5.
Mm-hmm.
So if it were just me, I would flip this property, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, cool. I trust your judgment. Let's go ahead and flip these properties.
Okay.
So
And that was the right decision.
100%.
Gotcha.
100%.
So then, I mean, I know it took 6 months, right, of struggling. What doubts did you face along the way?
Yeah. So doubts. I mean, what happens if this doesn't work out? Um, what if I can't pay these bills?
Hmm.
I mean, what if I bring my daughter into this world in 9 months and I don't have this figured out? Like I mean, that's just to name a few, right? There were so many doubts.
And how'd you overcome those?
I started taking the negative habits that I had, the circle of friends that I had at that time, and just tunnel vision. I started reading books. I started waking up earlier. I started studying on the weekends and the evenings. I was focused. I was reading. I was understanding values in real estate, and I just cut all the negative junk out of my life. And big surprise, like it was what exactly I needed to do.
It's awesome. It's awesome that you're able to figure that out early on in your career. When exactly did your business, you like, man, like this is it. This is a real deal. I can comfortably rely, like this is gonna be my career.
Yeah, this is a unique question because I'd say for like the first like year to 2 years in a business, it's kind of like you don't really know, especially if you don't have a team
Mhm.
working for you. So I would say when I started to really feel like we were onto something was when we had team. We had a transaction coordinator, we had an acquisition manager, and he was buying the houses, they were transacting it, and like deals were still happening
Mhm.
without my active involvement.
Yeah.
And that was when I was like, cool, like we can build this up and continue to scale.
How long ago was that?
So that was about a year, I think about a year and a half to 2 years in. I mean, I was the one closing all the deals. I was hustling the first year, the second year, and when it really was an aha to me, Steve, is when I moved to Vegas. We haven't even talked about that yet.
Right.
But when I moved to Vegas and I closed my first deal over the phone, and the investor who went to look at the property who bought this wholesale deal from me, he
Mm.
said, "Dude, how did you buy this house from Las Vegas? I know you're in Vegas right now.
Right.
How'd you do this?" I'm like,
Mhm.
"Well, like they told me that they had an offer for 120, and I asked them what would they need to get this done today, and they said 121. I said, "Cool, I'll send it over and we'll get it done."
Mhm.
And that was it. And like
Yeah.
that was like an aha for me because I'm like, I can truly be anywhere in the whole world and buy that same house.
Right.
And it was just like another mind shift.
What are some of the biggest victories for you along the way?
You know, the victories, I would say, gosh, there's been so many wins, right? But when you can take and teach what you know to another individual,
Mhm.
so in my case, it was my first acquisition manager, and have them start having the same type of success, that to me is the most fulfilling thing ever. To
Yeah.
show what you know to somebody else for them to go and do and have the same results.
Got it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the biggest deal you've done so far?
Yeah, so I mean, we're playing in Nebraska, right? So medium price point, 240, 250. Um, so we don't have these California spreads. I got to
Mhm.
preface it with this. We did 2 6-figure flips in small towns in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Super cool deals. And they were like the easiest deals ever because it was a Google ad. There was no competition on it. The seller told me what they needed. I contracted the house over the phone and we bought a house for 17. We put probably 35, 40 into it. We sold it for 165.
Yeah. So
So, yeah.
yeah, those are pretty awesome
It was
deals.
pretty nice. Yeah.
So, what brought you from Lincoln to Vegas?
Yeah. So my wife's sister had lived out there for a
Mhm.
few years, and she's like, "Guys, why are you still living in Nebraska? Nebraska's winters are brutal. We just got done with a terrible winter." And we're like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of scary to move across the country,
Mhm.
right? We just had a baby. I just got this job, and things were not comfortable. Thank God, because if they were, we might still be there.
Yeah.
But she was like, "You guys would love it out here. Come visit." My wife just turned 21 at
Mhm.
that time. We went out there to visit, and we came back and we said, "We're gonna move. Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna sell the house."
It was immediate. unanimous decision.
It was easy. Yeah. We went out there. We're like going to the pools, like just like hiking and like experiencing everything.
Right.
And we're like, this is it.
Mhm.
Like, we've got to sell our house. My wife actually approached me. She's like, hey, in order for you to quit your job, we've got to sell the house.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what do you mean sell the house? Like, this is the American dream, right?
Right.
Like, this is why we work so hard. And she's like, no, like, in order for you to take this business to where I know you want to take it to, we need to sell the house. And so we sold the house. And the day that money hit my bank account,
Mhm.
paid off the rest of the credit card debt, and we found a short-term lease until we found a place in Vegas, and adios.
So someone doing, 100 deals, right? So for someone that's listening right now, what would they have to do to be able to build a virtual wholesaling business?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing is you've got to know how each department of the business operates. So you need to learn how to do it yourself. I feel like that's really important. And from there, if you have capital, some people watching this may not have the capital.
Right.
And so if you have the capital, then you can start to bring on team members, right?
So step one is you've got to do deals successfully by yourself first.
Understand the process.
Yeah.
Yep. Know what you're doing and how to do it.
And I say that, and it might sound totally like ludicrous, right? Like that sounds so basic. But the reality is there are a lot of people that just get in and just start hiring VAs, just start spending money on marketing. And they don't even know how to do the transaction all the way from A to Z, right? Because like there's all this information out there. We're guilty of putting out that information. YouTube University. But I've heard countless people that are trying to scale with VAs and this and that, and they haven't even closed their first deal yet.
Yeah.
Right. So step one is start doing deals by yourself.
That would be an amazing place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And then after that, you say once you have capital, you would hire. So who's the first person you're hiring if you're doing your business virtually, right? Let's just say going back to your example right now, right? You're in Vegas, you're doing deals in the Midwest. Who's the first person you hire?
Transaction coordinator.
Okay.
Yep. Transaction team, admin, paperwork, get that out of here as quick as possible.
Okay. Is that virtual?
It could be.
So is this a person that's living in the market you're doing business with, or they could live anywhere in the country, or are they like overseas?
Could be either way. However you want to
Doesn't
set up your
matter.
business, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So you hire a transaction coordinator,
Mhm.
and they're offloading what activities again?
So they're doing like any admin work, any paperwork, transaction coordination, communication with title, payoffs, all of the stuff that
So
transaction.
for you,
does.
it's TC/admin. It's not straight transaction coordinator.
Right.
Okay.
It was in the beginning.
Okay. So
Yep.
now you got TC/admin. How many deals are you doing at this point?
At this point, I had done probably 35 deals before we made that first hire.
Right.
I'm kind of like somebody who just has a hard time giving up things. Like, I love closing, so I want to be on the phones, and so that was the first thing I needed to get rid of, is just the paperwork stuff that kind of drained me. And then it was acquisitions. I knew I needed to give up acquisitions, but I had a really hard time with it.
How many deals a month were you doing when you hired TC?
We were probably doing 3 to 4. It was
Okay.
about a deal a week, I would say.
Okay. And then after that, you hired an acquisition manager.
Mhm.
What was your deal volume when you hired that person?
So this is a fun one. At this point, we had done right at about $1 million. And the reason I know that very specifically is because the acquisition manager that we still have today, he came from an insurance sales business with phone sales. And he said, like, dude, this is like, you're a new business. Like, this is like taking a pretty big leap of faith. He asked me for our tax return. And I gave it to him. I said, hey, like, this is what you can expect. Like, we made $1 million, and here's how you would be compensated off of this $1 million. And by the way, this is where we're going. We're not going backwards. We're going this way.
Yeah.
And so I had to really sell him on why he should come work with us. And I think that million year was 2 years in, and we had done right around 60 deals
Gotcha.
that year.
Same question here. Because I'm asking all these questions because you're running a virtual business.
Yeah.
Right. Where's that acquisition manager at?
This is good. So our market in Nebraska, he's there. So I'm virtual. he's in the market that we do business in.
Mhm.
That was not always that way. We had a guy we had another guy that we tested in another market,
Mhm.
and the personality of that closer wasn't somebody who's gonna be building rapport and closing deals over the phone. The guy who we have in Omaha,
Mhm.
he doesn't go on every appointment.
Yeah.
He could, but he knows how to close over the phone.
Yeah.
And we don't just do deals in that market. We do deals in other markets too. So we can get into that, but we've done deals all over the place.
Sure. So TC, then acquisition manager, and that guy can handle what? How many deals a month can that guy handle?
He probably single-handedly closed 50 deals last year,
Okay.
maybe 60. So what is that?
Four,
Okay.
four or five deals
Four
a
or
month.
five a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say about one a week is where he can consistently perform. Obviously, our expectations are higher, so
Mhm.
like 2, 3 ideally,
Right.
but obviously, yeah.
And then there's a dispo person to move the deals.
Yep.
Who's doing that?
So we have a gentleman who he was in Texas. He moved, but yeah, he's full time, and that's all he does, just disposition.
Got it.
Yep.
And then you got lead manager.
We have 3 lead managers
So 3 lead managers for 1 or 2 acquisition managers.
for 3 acquisition managers.
3 lead managers for 3 acquisition managers.
Yep.
Okay. So the acquisition managers are not necessarily market specific. Lead manager, are they stateside or overseas?
So these ones we had to let somebody go, unfortunately, who was in states. But what I found is Central America, Belize is where we have all
Mhm.
3 of them. They're very understanding of our language,
Mhm.
and they do a great job. And so they're in Belize.
Gotcha. And then, and I asked this question because, like, Jason Lewis and I, right? He's obviously in Investor Fuel,
Mhm.
right? So he's got Investor Machine, and we collaborated to create a lead manager training program.
Okay.
And he is of the belief that you want American lead managers because when a homeowner calls in and there's any hint of an accent, you can lose all sorts of rapport. Obviously, your perspective is a little bit different. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this has been like I would say this is a limiting belief.
Mhm.
And I talked to Jason Lewis about this at the
Yeah.
last Investor Field,
Yeah.
and I still got to connect him, but I wanted to test these out first so I can make my own opinion. I mean, we didn't let the person in the States go because they were outperforming her. It was just like a performance issue. But
Mhm.
for that belief, it's if you let conversations go too long and they start asking too many questions and there's too much of a language barrier, yeah, you're going to lose a lot of trust,
Mhm.
especially if you're dealing with like some older crowd or demographic.
Mhm.
But with the way we do it is we have a very brief conversation. We get the 4 pillars and we get that out of the way. And if there's motivation and it qualifies for a pass off, they're getting pushed over to our acquisition manager, ideally live transfer or call back ASAP to bridge that gap.
Mhm.
Because if they can just say, hey, I'm not going to be the one going over numbers with you. It's going to be Justin, my home buying specialist. He'll be the one to go over that with you and get them on the phone ASAP. It usually is not going to be a big deal. It's for those people who start to ask too many questions and the
Sure.
conversation gets too long and maybe they're overqualifying. That's when it can become an issue.
So you mentioned the handoff, the transfer, live transfer. Ideally, what software are you guys using for live transfer?
So we've been using Resimply.
Mhm.
I was a Podio guy for the first 3 years in business, and I had spent way too many hours in time trying to work with the developer to customize this as we continue to build this out. And I just I can't do this anymore. I
Yeah.
can't take it. Like, this is just too much. And so we switched to Resimply, just like a turnkey system for it. And for the longest time, they didn't have some of the features. And so like we were just being as patient as we can. We almost switched to Salesforce. They just came out with a live transfer feature.
Gotcha. And then you got, okay, so 3 acquisitions, 3 lead managers, 1 dispo?
Yep.
Okay. And then what are your lead sources that are doing well? I think I heard you say Google Ads earlier, or at least one of your deals was Google Ads. So what are your lead sources predominantly?
Yeah, so Google Ads has been Steady Eddie. We've used that one since day one. And then it's ever changing. You know how it goes. Texting and cold calling have been hit and miss, and TV has been a big one for us.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tony Javier, helped us get on TV. And so what I love about that is we're a big fan of inbound. So people calling us, people seeing us as the authority in the market. And so TV, Google ads, God, I love direct mail. It works. I don't care what anybody says. It works. Maybe not in Phoenix.
It works in Phoenix. So then I guess doing TV, you got to be in a market then, right? Because TV doesn't work if you're not in a. If you're doing virtually, I guess let me ask this another way. The big appeal for virtual is that you can do Google nationwide or whatever.
Yep.
Right. But if you're doing TV, you're generally planting a flag in the ground.
Absolutely.
So what markets are you doing TV in?
Yeah. So we are doing TV in Nebraska, and then we rolled out a campaign in South Dakota as well.
Gotcha.
So we are focusing on the Midwest, specifically Nebraska. I would say majority, even though we do a lot of virtual, and when I say virtual, we do have a very specific market. We're not casting a net nationwide and doing deals in every market intentionally, right? We're very strategic about the markets that we do select. So we know we know what we can do in our main market where we have a footprint, and we know how to do deals with Google Ads anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
So we want to just pick markets where we feel good about that we have buyers for, because you reinvent a new wheel every market you open up.
Right.
It's a lot more work than what maybe you've heard. So
Sure.
yeah.
So then what is your budget then between TV, Google Ads, and direct mail?
45 a month.
45,000? Where is the majority of it going to?
15 of that's going to TV.
So that's not a lot. It's reasonable.
It's reasonable. Yeah, it's reasonable. Another 15, depending on the month.
Yeah.
20 on Google Ads, and then we're probably 5 on direct mail.
That's not bad at all.
Not bad at all. But we're not. I've done this before, where I've sent out mail to 50,000 people, and it is so painful because you basically spend $20,000 on the campaign, and you know it's going to come back. It's just scary, right?
Right.
So we do Facebook marketing as well. Didn't touch on that one, but that one's been, a lot of people don't know about Facebook. We've done Facebook for 3+ years.
Gotcha.
We consistently spend probably a couple grand on that a month.
Okay.
Yep.
So another question then. Oh, by the way, you say 15 grand a month. Like Tony Javier was back on the show late last year. He's like, you can get started in Phoenix for 15K. I was like, really? All right. Well, then I guess we're gonna try that.
He told me the same thing for Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Do I want to compete against Ryan Pineda?
Why not? Right? I mean,
Why not?
Go big or go home.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you say you're a big fan of inbound, and we're talking about the lead managers, right? Being in Belize or Central America. So I see you. Is it your face on the ads?
Yep.
All right. So I see your TV commercial. I pick up the phone and I call in. Who's answering the phone?
Yep. So this has changed a little bit. I had my in-state lead manager processing those calls.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where we felt like we were overqualifying people. And then my acquisition manager would call them back anyway to have another conversation. And then we started getting, hey, the lady before just asked me that question. Like, why am I answering the same questions again? And so I started forwarding those to my acquisitions team. And so my main acquisitions guy in the market that we do TV, who knows the area, started answering those calls. And then if he was on an appointment, if he wasn't able to take those calls, it went to an answering service. They processed it, they submitted the form, and then we jumped on it. The lead manager would jump on it then at that point.
So I guess a question for you then, for me, just out of curiosity, if you've got boots on the ground in that market, why are you doing it virtually? Or we're saying that Michael's doing it virtually, but you have him going on face-to-face appointments.
In that market, there's really no reason why we're doing it virtually besides the fact of some situations call for it, other ones don't. So for example, he knows that if this seller's telling us they're sick of the property, they're over it, they've basically spilled the beans on everything that we need to know, and then we've determined that the price that they want works, we're just going to contract the house. We're not going to waste any time. We're just going to buy it, and then we still got to validate and verify and,
Right.
and do our due diligence. In other cases, though, if it's an older seller, I think it's really important to go belly to belly with those types of people. Whether if it's a boots on the ground or whether if it's your acquisition manager, trust is so important. Like if these people can't shake your hand, you don't even exist.
Right. Well, I mean, I just think, and this is totally a limiting belief, right? But I'm just thinking Midwest, right? The Midwest, the South, if they can't shake your hand, right? Like, why would they do business with you? But you're also still doing a lot virtually, though.
We are. And one of our biggest wholesale deals this year so far, which in Omaha, $46,000 assignment fee, was a situation where the lead came in on a Sunday. It was an absentee and here, like just a vacant house. And the lady just gave us a review lately, even though we closed in the first month of the year. And it was actually a very interesting case study. She was the demographic we're talking about, and she was uncertain the whole time. She's like, this seems too easy. Like, why did I not show you the house? Why did you buy the house over the phone? Like, I haven't seen anybody. Like, she started to ask these questions, and in her review, I'm not very happy about it, but she left us a 4-star because we go for 5-star service. You know, that's important for our brand. And so anyway, I asked my transaction team, I'm like, why was this said? Like, was some expectation not set of like what they could expect? And I think there was something that was miscommunicated, right?
Yeah.
But that's just the proof that demographic values that in-person experience.
Yeah. What questions have I not asked you about virtual that you typically get?
Do you get the contract first, or do you get somebody to look at the house first? That's a question that I get all the time. And my answer has changed on this. I was a big believer in, hey, why would the seller sell me the house if I haven't seen it? Well, that belief system came from not asking good enough questions.
Sure.
So if we dial in our questions and get specific about the age of the roof, the furnace, the HVAC, all these things, then the seller knows, hey, I've given them everything that I pretty much have. And so the process is we take that information back to our team. They let us know what the property qualifies for. We simply deliver that to the seller, and then we negotiate the deal and get the contract. But we still set the expectation that we're going to go ahead and still have our investors, our partners, and depending on the circumstances, we may not even be the one to buy it if it's a novation. And so we do set that stage, and we do get the contract first.
When does the due diligence start?
The day the contract is executed.
So one thing that we've done for ourselves when we were doing it a lot virtually was a 14-day due diligence period did not begin until after we got access or photos.
I like that.
Right. So it gave us a little bit more time. Right. So, and then it also put urgency on the homeowner because there were times where they're like, I don't want to send you photos. Now we got to play this game. Like, you're not sending me the photos till like a week before close of escrow. This isn't going to work for anybody.
Oh, man. I can't tell you how many times we've had deals almost die, and some die.
Yeah.
Because the seller says that they'll send us photos, but it never happens.
Right.
And so we really try to put an emphasis on that up front. And if we get the impression that they're just not going to ever get us the photos, we just hire somebody to go out and take them for us, and then that eliminates that.
But that gave us the ability to instill some sort of urgency in the homeowner.
Right.
One thing you wrote down about here was team building. So talk to me about team building.
Yeah. So for me, like, I didn't want to create a high-paying job. I knew from the first year in real estate that there was a lot of money to be made in this business. But that wasn't like, don't get me wrong, like, you got to make money, right? You got to be making money to be in business. But for me, I was more intrigued about how can I build this up to the point where if I am with my family, if I'm on vacation, or if I'm doing something that doesn't require me talking to a seller, the transactions are still going to happen. So my vision for the company was, how can we build this up to we have a team, they have the tools, the resources, everything that they need to be able to go out and execute.
Yeah.
So that was the importance for the team piece. And then for that, for next, is we just started thinking to ourselves, okay, well, how many leads does each acquisition manager need to do X, Y, Z? And then we just reverse engineered it. So we started thinking in terms of, okay, they need this many leads, or we're gonna have to spend this much more on marketing. Got to bring in this many leads, and then this is the average profit. So we just started really taking everything from like the beginning and then working it backwards, and then plugging in more marketing, plugging in more people, and the team thing has been a work in progress. I know we'll talk about maybe some lessons and stuff like that, but I would say building a team virtually
Mm-hmm.
has certainly had its challenges.
What would you say is the biggest challenge building it virtually versus building it, within an office?
Yeah. So, I mean, I love in-person energy. I love being able to high
You're a
five
very
somebody.
energetic person.
I've been told that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. But
Right.
my point is, I just, the energy in person is exciting, and like when you can go high five somebody, you can ring the bell, you can see something happen in real time, and then be able to point that out and call that out and
Mhm.
solve a problem, where speed is important when it comes
Right.
to these deals. And so my point with all that said is, virtually, we can do our daily huddles, we can do our numbers, we can go over everything that we need to go over, but you don't get that same energy.
Right.
We're competing for a belt right now,
Mhm.
and I'm on that. I'm trying to step out of it, but I got to keep my acquisition guys hungry and motivated. And so I'll close a deal every now and then.
Mhm.
I'll jump in there and I'll close a deal. And so these guys, getting that excitement every single day when you're just sitting in your own office at home, like not in an office environment, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
For somebody who's motivated, it's like no big deal. But I own the business, like they're not going to be as excited.
So how do you replace that? Because you're saying with everything that's like more challenging. What did you do to rectify that?
Yeah. So I mentioned the belt. So that's just something we can have fun about.
So belts for all the acquisition managers, whoever's buying houses.
Yep. So
What does it take to win that belt?
they have to be at the end of the month top projected profits,
Mhm.
and this is a new thing. So this is a work in progress, because we've been asking, like, this is a challenge, by the way. We've been asking all of our mastermind friends, like, hey, who runs virtual teams? What's the best approach for this team bonding and all this? And so that's one thing. Giveaways. So we still have a wheel. It's a virtual wheel. It sounds silly, right? But in office, people have wheels. And so each week we'll spin the wheel for somebody who went above and beyond, and recognize them. We did a rock star of the month. So somebody who stood out, we nominated them, and we talked about them personally. So it's just getting to know them, not on a business level.
Yeah.
But like today before I came here, I had lunch with my acquisition manager who lives in Scottsdale.
Mhm. Oh, nice.
Yep. So I got to do some team bonding there, and just really get to know our people. And so we have a recruiter. Didn't mention that. That's all she does is team bonding and team exercises. And we have surveys and questions and things that we can really start to understand, like something that they're not going to tell me, like in passing, right?
Okay, so you got a recruiter. Where's she at?
She's in California.
She's in California.
Yep.
So then, we talked about all the different people, so I apologize. So you get the acquisition, disposition, TC, recruiter. What other seats are at your company that we haven't talked about?
Yep. So we haven't talked about, we have an IT gentleman who has really helped us with our website, really helped us with SEO efforts.
Yeah.
And so he's an expert in that. I have a social media manager who helps us with Google, Facebook advertising,
Mhm.
and then just like the creative copy.
Yeah.
Let's see, who am I missing here? I have an acquisition manager in Vegas.
Mhm.
Virtual works, but I do like the idea of having a central location. I don't care if you have a central location and you do deals in another state. I think having a central location eventually is something that I want to get back to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I know, like Ryan and I, we just read in sales leadership this past weekend. That's what we talked about. Like, even if they're in all these multiple markets, there's still a preference for like everyone in the same office. Right. That's one of the challenges.
For sure.
So I want to get into audience's questions, but before we do that, just a quick message.
I mean, everything. I mean, just the persuasion skills and the scripts that he taught us and the techniques, and just overall, it's like just learning A to Z on how to go out and go right on an appointment with the seller and make the most out of it, and different exit strategies, and whether you're wholesaling, innovation, just everything. You got a whole new arsenal of tools you can use directly with sellers just going on an appointment right now. Knowing what I know now, I mean a lot, like just in terms of just, having sellers where we listed their houses, and just, listing appointments that we could have wholesaled or could have flipped, or just different exit strategies. Definitely a lot of money that we left on the table. What type of person would benefit from the sales training? Anybody in sales, anybody in general. I mean, just like communicating with family, with friends. I mean, any salesperson, especially real estate, solar. I mean, just anybody in general, I think would benefit from the sales training.
All right. So first question on YouTube is DCP1. How are you handling walkthroughs virtually? Hopefully not 15 partners walking through.
Very carefully. Very, very carefully. So this is ever changing. Every situation is different. So in some circumstances, we may have one buyer or two buyers, and we can set the stage with the seller. We can set the stage with the buyers. Listen, every conversation, the buyers might ask you about price. The buyers might ask you questions. Don't worry about that. They'll get back to us. We'll have that conversation about price, anything like that. So that's the first scenario. It's maybe a couple people. If you have a deal where you have 15 investors, please don't send them to the house without anybody. In that case, we'll hire an agent.
Sure.
So we'll consult with an agent. We'll say, hey, would you be able to go do this house? Just open it up. Here's what to expect. $100. Yeah. And most agents will tell you you're nuts. I wouldn't do that for $100. And if that's the case, you can negotiate with them. Or worst case scenario, you find somebody on Craigslist. And I don't recommend that because you never know who you're going to get. So find a professional, ideally.
So you said that those are the expectations you set for the homeowner. What expectations are you setting for the buyers?
Yeah. So for the buyers, it's pretty consistent. So I think the key with this business is you want to make sure that your message with the seller is consistent, especially if you're wholesaling with the seller, as it is with the buyers, as it is with your acquisitions team, your transaction team. Everybody's telling the seller the same thing. Otherwise, what's going to happen is people just get confused. So for our message with the buyer, it's just like, hey, we've got the property under contract. We're simply just going to take the highest and best offer. So once you look at the property, please go ahead and just send us your highest and best offer. We'll be making a decision this day, this time. Yeah. And that's it.
Cool. Strat Daddy on Instagram wants to know, how did you grow your sales team virtually?
Yeah. So this is shout out to Josh and Tiffany for helping us with the teams. Josh and Tiffany High. Yeah. They've really helped me create a framework around this. And so we weren't having like daily huddles. We didn't have reports. We didn't have like very clear expectations. Now that we've implemented some things, every single day, the same time, the same place, we always do our numbers. We always do daily training. We're always looking to improve. At the end of the week, we're going to review the goal. So we'll set the goal at the beginning of the week, and at the end of the week, we're going to talk about it. Today, it's Wednesday. Maybe the goal is 100,000 for the week, projected profit. There's a percentage. How much profit do we have on the board? And so my point is with all this is it's just expectations and accountability. Yeah. And that's how we can manage it virtually.
How are you sourcing talent though?
Good question. So we have a recruiter. We use Wise Hire to hire, and she is just looking for rock stars. Her full-time job is to find talent, and it's a work in progress always. Sure. Like we're always looking for rock stars.
So Wise Hire ads, is there anything you guys are doing differently, or are you guys just doing the same thing as everybody else?
Yeah, so I don't know what everybody else is doing. I know what I did. When I first started hiring, I had one conversation and I said, you got the job, because I'm like, I don't have time for this, right? Yeah. And so now that we have a recruiter, we do have a process. So the first conversation, it's culture.
Yeah.
We're going to get to know, they're going to get to know who we are. We're going to get to know who they are. What's our culture? The second conversation, that's going to be more about maybe their job history and the position specifically. And then the third one might be, ideally, it's like an in-person, like, let's see if we even like this person, their personality. And then that's pretty much it. We have a three to four step, depending on the person and the position, hiring process.
Gotcha. Tim Harridge on Facebook says Mike's a beast. He was on the show last week. That guy, a monster, what he's been able to accomplish. Dean Rogers on Facebook. Which do you think is better, going all in on one market versus going smaller in several markets?
I really like this question, Dean. This is a good one, man. I've been so back and forth about this because I know the power of national, multiple markets. I still think it's best to go all in on one market. Because if I look at all of our revenue from last year, 80% of it was done in one market.
Yeah.
We have deals, and we've had good deals close in virtual markets, but we can't run TV. We can't go as heavy on the marketing, all these markets. I mean, if we had an unlimited budget, we could.
Right.
So I'm big on focusing on a couple or one market and then going from there.
Gotcha. And then Steve Estrada on IG. What are your thoughts on PropWire? Have you looked into it?
PropWire? I've never heard of it.
I believe it's a PropStream competitor from our good friend Jerry Norton.
Oh, okay.
But have not had a chance to check that one out specifically yet. So let's see here. So going back right now, like what so you got yourself in Vegas, you got 3 different people, one in Vegas, one in Scottsdale, one in Nebraska. I guess one question I have for you, because we did TV in New Mexico and we did TV in Oklahoma. And in both markets, apparently, when you're in a smaller state, smaller population state, that channel just goes to the whole state, right? So, like here, if I advertise on Phoenix, it might make it to Flagstaff. Probably not going to make it to Tucson, right? But when we were advertising in Albuquerque, we were getting leads in Santa Fe. We're getting leads at the border, right? We're getting leads where the states, literally where the border lines are, right? And then the same thing happened in Oklahoma. When we were advertising on TV, there are people that were an hour and a half away, right? And it's like, I remember we bought this property, contracted. We didn't buy it. We contracted this property for $8,000.
Yeah, it's a great deal, right?
Right? And I was like, how can we lose money on this deal? No one was interested, right?
Oh,
So
I have stories.
So talk to me about doing TV in a smaller population market, because, like, I mean, what is the population in your market?
200 to 250. I mean, 250 for Lincoln.
Yeah.
Omaha's close to 1 million.
How far away is Omaha from Lincoln?
That's what's great. They're only 45 minutes apart. So, like, it's really like Scottsdale, like Phoenix, right? Like, it's all together pretty much.
Yeah.
But they're 2 separate stations. So we have to pay 2 different markets.
Gotcha.
Still working on Tony with that one. But we got to pay for 2 different markets. But to your point, these small towns, we had a house under contract for $500 once, Steve. Nobody wanted to buy it.
Yeah.
Why? That's weird. Why wouldn't you want to buy a $500 house, right? But we've bought houses for $500. We've bought houses for $1,500. Like, just buy it for cash and then seller finances somebody else, and you get your upfront cost back in 3 months.
Right.
And so you either buy it really, really cheap, and we simply just try to disqualify those leads as hard as we can. Some of the people, though, they just want to get rid of the house. It's junker, whatever. They don't want it. The key, though, is you're going to get those leads. There's nothing you can do about it. And if you don't have a strategy for it, you are just shredding money. Like, those leads cost money, so you're shredding money. But we started to figure out innovations. And with these small towns, we just say, hey, look, this doesn't qualify for a cash offer. I mean, we'd have to buy it for way low, and you probably don't want to do that, right? So we disqualify them. And then, but if you're interested, we do have another program that you might be interested in. I don't know for sure if it qualifies, but if it does, we might be able to get you your price, but here's what we're going to need in return.
Yeah.
So we're teeing it up to where it's going to be an innovation. We're going to get the contract. We're going to put the property on the MLS. And if you can get the property in these small towns on the MLS, they typically will sell.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the trick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the $500 house, you close on it?
No.
No.
No, we didn't even close on it.
Yeah.
It was just like it was a junk house. Like it was
Falling
foundation
apart?
issues, falling apart, and yeah.
Follow-up question from DCP1. Do you let the sellers know that you're wholesaling?
Yeah. So this is a good question, and I think a lot of people are going to have different opinions about this, but this has changed for me. In the beginning, it was like I didn't really want to disclose it, but now that we've built up a brand and we have a reputation, the last thing I want is for the seller to get a curveball. And so when we are wholesaling it, we're pretty open about like, hey, it's not us. We're going to be selling this to another investor partner, and that's it. And if that's not going to work for you, I totally understand. But this is a hard conversation to have. I'm still working on this conversation with my acquisitions team because I can tell a seller that, but getting them to fully disclose because they don't want to miss out on the deal.
Mhm.
If I tell the seller this, they're not going to want to do the business. It's just not the truth.
Right.
If you have an easy button for them, they don't really care how they're going to get paid,
Right.
as long as they get paid.
Yeah, they just want the money on closing day.
Exactly. So we set up the stage that there is an inspection period, and that is going to take time before we can give you the green light. The worst case scenario here, seller, is we messed up.
Yeah.
And we got to come back and have that conversation.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So you're talking about, doing this virtually. What freedoms have you found, running your business the way you ran it? What freedom does it afford you?
Yeah, I love this one. I mean, I work from home. I don't go into an office. This is challenging, so I'll start with that. In the fact that my kids and my wife are in the other room, and I'm in my home office, so it's a blessing that I can just go out there. But it's also challenging in the fact that I might be on the phone in a business meeting, and my 2-year-old might just scream because he's mad, right? And so that freedom has been amazing. And then the other component is like, I'm here right now, and my team is still on the phones.
Yeah.
It's a blessing for sure.
Besides the freedom to do what you want from wherever, what else do you love about real estate?
I wish I would have found about real estate when I was 18. I wish they'd teach this stuff in school because it's just the ultimate freedom. Like when you can take a asset and you can borrow against it and you can have tax advantages. There's just so many things. I mean, the list just goes on. I love closing deals. To me, it's fun. It's a game. And so closing deals, the tax benefits, the freedom that it can provide for you. Where do I stop? I mean, there's just so many.
Well, I'm with you on that because that's the reason why we have the podcast, right? So we can, we're on a mission to create 100 millionaires, right? We're preaching the gospel of entrepreneurship, right? We want people to know about it, but because it's not taught in school. Steve Estrada says it's crazy that he's always been told not to tell a seller you're a wholesaler. What does your marketing look like for 2023? This is a question from Jason Toledo on YouTube.
All right, so 2023. So I don't know if you guys heard, we actually missed the boat on the hedge funds because hedge funds were not buying in Nebraska. So that didn't affect our business. But what did is the wholesale market is squeezed. I don't know if you guys have felt that at all. And so with that, we've started looking at just total overhead. So we are looking at non-revenue generating payroll and just making decisions on, hey, is this position when the market was like this still needed today when the market is a little bit different? But at the end of the day, we understand that the market is the market. It doesn't affect the way we do business. So we are still continuing to market. We're still running the channels that we talked about. TV, though, is one that we did back off on a little bit just because of it's just a pretty significant expense. So we've pivoted and just cut down a little bit, but we haven't changed anything.
Got it.
The channels are the same.
What is your why?
It's my family. Yeah, 100%. So the day that I found out my wife was expecting was the day that I found a true purpose
Mhm.
along with real estate coinciding. And I just want to give my family the life that they deserve.
Yeah.
And so for sure it's family.
What is your biggest struggle today?
Biggest struggle today. Oh man. I mean, I would say I would just say being the best leader that I can for my team. I get out of bed excited every day. I don't know if you could tell. Like I'm excited.
I can tell.
I love real estate. I love connecting, and I love all of that. But when I'm yelling at through a screen sometimes to my team, I feel like sometimes the message isn't getting heard. And so I'm working on this myself as just becoming a better leader, asking better questions, setting better expectations, just a better leader, because I don't want to be the one that holds our business back from reaching the next level.
What does yelling at the screen mean? Is it like you're fired up or you're like chewing them out?
Yeah, I'm not the
Or
type.
both.
I'm not the type of guy that really chews people out.
Okay.
For anybody who's watching who knows me would probably agree. But it's more like, let's go. Like we're excited, right?
Mhm.
Like we're here to close some deals today and make some money, and it's more of an excitement yelling than it is. I'm not yelling at you. I'm trying to fire you up.
Gotcha. Okay. And how are you measuring success?
Yeah, this is a good question. Well, I mean, for me, it's time with family.
Mhm.
So this has been ever changing. In the early days of business, my brain barely had the capacity to like figure out how to run the business,
Yeah.
let alone do all the time blocking stuff. And so for me, it's just quality of time with my family. The hardest part is this is something I'm working on, has been just full attention.
Mhm.
So I'm with my wife and my kids. We're sitting at dinner, and they look at me, and my mind is over there.
Mhm.
I'm there, but my mind is not there. So
Right.
the hardest part is just like focusing on being fully present, and that to me is what I want.
What are you doing about that?
Yep. So working on this one, cashing out. So anything that's on my mind when I'm in my office, even though I'm at home, is either A, getting it on paper, number one, and then shutting my phone either off or just leaving it in my office. As easy as it sounds, sometimes it just somehow finds its way.
Yes, it just sneaks in there.
It just sneaks out.
Yeah.
And so shutting the phone off has been a game changer, or just leaving it in the office, because then I can't like get the itch to go look at my phone and like see something and then tell my team, you know what I mean? So it's just like that's what I'm doing to improve that. And then the other thing is just time blocking. So from this time in the morning to this time, I do my best to have breakfast with my family. In the evening hours, from this time to this time, there's no phone. Very intentional about having that time with my kids, playing with my kids, going for a walk, doing something together as a family.
That's awesome. Has this been a situation where it's come up within the family where like, hey, like, you know, dad, you're on the phone too much, or like, has there been like significant pushback here?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if my wife's watching right now, but I would be lying to you if I told you no. Like it definitely came up, and
Yeah.
I think many business owners and driven individuals would probably tell you that is a thing, that if you don't fix that, then it's going to become an issue. And so for me, the reason why we started this business was to spend more time with our family.
Right.
So it freaks me out to think that business would consume me to the point where I don't find time for family. And so when I have that conversation with my wife, it's like, this is important. Like, trust me, this is really important to me. This is more important than any money, any business, anything. And so here's what I'm going to do to make sure that you can see that.
Yeah. It's a struggle, right? Because, you know, you said that your wife's your family, and I've got this theory. I'm not saying it's right. I've got this theory that we all started off for the business for money, right? Usually for money. And then, there's elements of time freedom, right? So there's time freedom and financial freedom. I think most entrepreneurs start for time freedom, financial freedom, right? So that's their why. And then it gets to a point like, okay, I'm doing this for my family, right? But if you're doing it for your family, like how much money do you really need for your family?
This poll.
Right? So then is it truly your family or is it something else? So have you gone deep into this or you're like planting your flag in like, no, it's 100% my family?
Yeah, well, you make a good point. This changes. I think every entrepreneur, every business has a season. And I did this 7 layers deep exercise.
Mhm.
Anybody who's watching this, if you haven't done the why 7 layers deep exercise, you should just look it up and do it. Dean Graciosi talks about it.
Mhm.
Change your life.
Yeah, it's a great exercise.
Great exercise.
Definitely, generally, recommendations, do it with someone that doesn't know you well.
Yes. And if I've done this with my family, I've done this with my wife's parents,
Mhm.
we've done this as a family. At the end of it, we were all crying like babies.
Yeah.
And if your why isn't big enough for you to cry, then you need to dig a little deeper,
Yeah.
is the concept. And so my point with that being said is my family is always going to have that component of why I continue to push forward, even when times are tough.
Mhm.
Even if we have to let somebody go, whatever's going on, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
But as I continue to mature and grow as a business owner, my why starts to become a little bit more about legacy and impact
Mhm.
and helping more people. And it's not as selfish anymore. It's not about me and my money and my family. That's always going to be important to me. But as long as we can take care of that, now we can start to think about bigger picture impact, changing lives, helping more people. And that is the season that I'm transitioning towards.
So what have you found out about that, about yourself in that capacity?
I found out that it's if you're not prepared to commit to it, it can take away from what you're currently doing.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm needed for this many hours of my business and I'm over here trying to juggle this ball and give my time to my family, pretty soon I'm spread too thin.
Yeah.
And so that's been a juggling act in itself.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I've experienced that as well. Right. So again, that's the reason why I asked, like, is as you get into this part where you're growing, you said that it was impactful. One of your biggest wins was helping your lead or acquisition manager, right? Teaching him something.
Yeah.
So part of that kind of goes back to like, you want to give back. And so now you got this challenge, right? And, like, again, it's a theory, right? But when someone says like, I want to care for my family, it's almost like, when you say like, hey, what are your core values? Like, integrity and this and that. It's like, well, everyone should have integrity. Like, that's like,
Yeah. Right.
that's just a start, right? You can't hang your hat on integrity, right? So that's the reason why I dive deeper on that. So then what is your superpower?
My superpower is speed, implementation.
Mhm.
My wife and I talked a lot about this. So if she's watching, she's going to laugh at this because it took me a second to think about that. But I think so many people, Steve, spend way too much time on things that just don't matter.
Mhm.
Business card. I spent so much time on business cards. And by the way, this wasn't always my superpower.
Yeah.
I spent so much time trying to come up with the domain. What was my business name going to be? All these things that just didn't move the needle. And now that I've went through that and I've watched the business develop, I realized that any great deal, anything that required a quick decision resulted in the highest return if we could just make that decision fast.
Yeah.
If we jumped on that seller lead within the 3 minutes that we're supposed to, if we solved that problem, if we made the decision to come on this show or do whatever, like if you give yourself too much time to think,
Mhm.
indecision happens.
Indecision combined with anxiety, combined with regret and fear of missing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. For
No,
sure.
I'm with you on that. That's that quick action. Fortunately for me, is just one of those things kind of like built in. But man, like you look around and people that take longer to take action, it's like it sucks because like who knows what you might have missed out on. But they're always like, well, what if something bad happens? Like, but what if something good happens?
What if you didn't do that?
Right.
Like did we talk about biggest fear?
No, go ahead.
Okay. My biggest fear is wishing that I would have done something. At the end of my life, if I have to look back, I mean, I think just the fact that we have this life, we got to look back and live with our regrets is looking back and saying, man, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have tried this. I wish I would have made that extra call. I wish I would have started that business. I wish I would have, whatever it is for you. That's my biggest fear.
Yeah.
Is just not doing what I knew that I was capable of.
Yeah. There's a great quote on that, right? Like, our greatest fear is not what we might miss out on. Our greatest fear is how great and awesome we can be. Something along those lines. I'm butchering that quote.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, along those lines, what is your biggest regret?
Biggest regret?
Mhm.
This is easy. It's wholesaling so many properties.
Mhm.
And I don't want to spin this in such a negative way, because I believe that there are paths, like freshman and sophomore year,
Mhm.
wholesale. Junior year, start to flip. Senior year, maybe you start to buy properties. It is crazy to me, though, to look at all the properties that I wholesaled 3 years ago. Number one, to see how much they sold for.
Mhm.
But number two, to realize what my net worth would look like had I kept even a fraction of those.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, yeah, we were flipping everything. We were selling and flipping, and we hold some properties. But I mean, we're talking hundreds of deals.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have kept some more, and I would still. That's my focus moving forward, is trying to figure out how to keep more.
Yeah. No, that's good. How did you learn your greatest lesson?
All right. So this is a lesson that I think a lot of real estate investors are going to be able to relate to. So you know who David Richter is,
Mhm.
right?
Of course.
Profit first. Mine is just not hiring somebody to focus on the books soon enough,
Yeah.
and not using other people's money and having all of my cash tied up into flips, because I don't know if anybody can relate. When you have so much money in your flips, you just feel poor. The operation has to keep going. Your
Right.
marketing keeps going.
Yeah. Property rich, cash poor.
Property rich, cash poor.
Yeah.
So that would be a big two.
Yeah, and again, we just put together our wealth assessment. So go to wealthevaluation.com. I actually reference David Richter in this. I just put 6 pages together on how to assess your wealth.
Yeah.
David Richter is one of those sources in there, right, on assessing your wealth. Because I think you can't create something that you don't measure, or you can't improve something you don't measure. So we put some tools for people to measure where their net worth today. What book have you gifted more than any other?
Miracle Morning. Miracle Morning.
Do you need Miracle Morning? I mean, you seem like you're fired up. Were you less fired up before?
Oh, Steve, man, if you would have met me 5 years ago,
Yeah.
you would have think that I just came out of whatever. Like I've always been a happy-go-lucky person,
Mhm.
but when you have zero energy because you have zero sleep and you have zero money in your bank account,
Yeah.
the energy is just a little bit different.
Right.
But Miracle Morning, I would say it's been a huge game changer for me.
Yeah.
When you don't have like habits or routines,
Mhm.
you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants.
Kind of drift.
You kind of drift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Miracle Morning is one of my books I recommended the most. It's an incredible book. I was just kind of surprised because you got this. You're not, what was it, T2000 or T1000? What was the Terminator in Terminator 2? Right.
Okay.
You're not quite that guy, but
Yeah.
I can kind of see like you just stepping out here and just going to a full sprint without breaking a sweat. Am I crazy here?
I mean, no, you're not. You're spot on.
Right.
I'm excited because this is it. Like,
Yeah.
this is all we have.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I love that. I love that energy. So I want you to think about a message you want to leave the auto listeners with. Last thoughts, and I'm going to just read something real quick. Everyone that's listening right now, we see a window of opportunity in this market, and I am personally excited to seize this moment. So if you have capital and don't know where to get started in real estate, you can invest with us. If you have killer deals that you need help closing on, you can partner with us. So go to teamwithsteve.com and let's do business together. If you guys got value today, please like, subscribe, share, comment. Well, I guess don't forget we got Part of the Disruption tomorrow. What are the last thoughts you'd like to leave all the listeners with?
Yeah. For those of you who are watching this, if you've thought about investing in real estate, if you have a business, if you have big goals, just decide and take action and go for it, because you're just one decision away from changing the trajectory of your entire life. I know going to that seminar 5 years ago changed my life forever.
Yeah. Well, and that's a big thing, you know. I know we're supposed to wrap up here, but like this is something I struggle with. So we look at that service provider, you want to call it, right? And it feels a little scammy, right? But if it didn't exist, you wouldn't necessarily be here. You might be here. You might not be here. You don't know for sure. RJ Bates, right? He talked about it on one of our Part of the Disruption episodes, right? He talked about like he felt like he got scammed by $60,000 by a guru for $60,000. But would he have continued moving forward if he didn't have to pay his mom back? Right?
Good point.
We don't know. So myself personally, I got up to my eyes in credit card debt and building my business, right? I went all in on me. Who are we to say you shouldn't go all in on yourself, right? So it's just, it's a struggle. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's a struggle. This is just this spectrum here.
That's really good. It's bet on yourself. If it's decide and know that the decision that you're making could have consequences.
Right.
I'm not telling you guys to go put $45,000 on credit cards when you don't have the money to pay it back. In fact, I don't recommend it. You might lose some sleep. But
yeah, I don't recommend it either. But it's also hard to tell someone not to do it. It's like,
I know. No, I hear you.
Yeah.
I think you got to have skin in the game.
Yeah. I think you absolutely have to have skin in the game. How can someone get a hold of you?
Yeah. So you can check me out on Instagram. It's Michael McDonald REI. And you can check my website out. It's thevirtualmillionaires.com. We talked about being able to give back and help people out.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the special link?
Sure. Yeah,
cool.
Go ahead.
So I'm giving away just an entry-level course for investors. It's thevirtualmillionaires.com for Steve's listeners /RED. And you can grab a free course right there.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely,
It was
man.
a pleasure.
For sure.
Thank you guys for watching. See you guys tomorrow on PTD.
Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.